Is being genetically predisposed to obesity actually a thing? I think the genetics is that some people are more predisposed to storing fat versus just sending extra calories to waste. I have to eat like an absolute pig to gain weight, and if I am even remotely good for a few weeks I start to shed pounds. It only takes a tiny bit of discipline for me get back to my normal weight. Note to self: stop buying ice cream for a while. My wife on the other hand eats 1 extra calorie and she keeps it. So many people who fall into my category, easy weight loss, have a hard time empathizing with those who have it harder and must constantly stay disciplined to keep their weight down. I didn't change one thing about my lifestyle, but I got prescribed medication for ADHD in my 30s and suddenly dropped 40 pounds. The way that my body functioned was different. The amount of stress I was under just living my life the exact same way was completely different. I could sleep and my insomnia was majorly improved. All of these things cause weight gain and prevent weight loss. I didn't change anything about how I ate, how often I ate, how I managed any of my other health conditions or my level of activity. I dance and box. Thyroid conditions are genetic. A lot of feeling satiated and speed of metabolism is run by the thyroid. There have been some studies that indicate a predisposition to obesity depending on the diets of the parents that were malnourished. Genetic triggers, as it were. Basically, populations that were malnourished during World War II had children that faced weight problems. As far as storing fat, just in case, because of their parents' lack of food. I couldn't find the study I had read, but this works. Search on transgenerational, and now transgenerational is in my spell checker. People can be genetically predisposed to obesity, but that isn't the same as being genetically obese. Basically, some people's genes make them more likely to build up fat stores than others. But nothing in their genetics can actually make them stay overweight if they have a calorie deficit. Edit. Spelling. Endocrinologist sounds worth a shot. But PLS, don't be surprised if it doesn't yield any results. It's very much possible to be predisposed to obesity. PLs don't give your spouse the idea that they're less lovable or less attractive with a higher weight than they could be. Stress like that could actually impact their weight and make them gain, apart from being really hard on their confidence. Yes, it's a real thing. When it comes to obesity, multiple factors are at play, many of which are beyond your control, including genetics, childhood habits, medical conditions, and hormones. One of the most common traits is leptin resistance. Leptin is a hormone that helps regulate appetite and metabolism. It's produced by fat cells and sends a signal to the part of your brain that tells you to stop eating. A lot of people with obesity have leptin resistance. Even though your body produces a lot of leptin, your brain doesn't see or recognize it. When your brain doesn't receive the leptin signal, it wrongly thinks that it's starving. So the body stores fats away in adipose tissue so the body doesn't die. Source. Research shows that a lot of diseases commonly associated as symptoms of obesity are actually the cause of the obesity, like hyperthyroidism or diabetes. People can have more adipose cells than others. Some of that is genetic. Much of it is childhood health and weight and diet. Once you hit adulthood, you pretty much have as many adipose cells as you'll ever have. If you were a healthy weight as a child, you have less fat cells than a child who was overweight. But those cells essentially grow or shrink throughout life based on caloric intake. So if someone has more cells, they may not ever become as skinny as someone with fewer cells. Again, how many cells you have is pretty much fixed by the age of 18-ish, and then it's just about the size of those cells. People can also be genetically predisposed to have a different muscle mass that makes them look stocky versus lean. But actual obesity, not just being curvier than others, will come down to adipose cells and how much fat is stored there, which is largely caloric intake, with things like hormones or other health conditions making it more difficult for some. Researchers have identified hundreds of genetic traits related to obesity. Mostly, it seems to act by creating a buffer where the body won't burn fat even in a calorie deficit. Or more specifically, what would be a calorie deficit in other people? Have you ever met a gym rat who's a hard gainer? Can't add on much mass even with tons of effort. There are hard losers too, even if it irks the personal trainer types. I haven't seen anyone mention metabolism, which is interesting. Metabolism can be genetic. Weight loss is not easy. And I understand your concern, as I've read other comments you made about how his self-esteem has been impacted by his weight. I do ask you be careful, though, about discussing this with your partner. Obviously I cannot speak for him, but it could be possible you could unintentionally upset him. Especially since you said he is insecure. He may worry you think he's not doing enough, that you don't like him because he isn't losing weight, etc. Not saying you actually think these things at all. I'm just a fat dude who knows how being insecure can make PPL worry. Your partner needs support and love. This helps motivate people to keep losing weight. If you bring up concerns about his weight, make sure you specify you just want him to be happy and you know how his weight has impacted his mental health. Also, has he considered seeing a dietitian? Or nutritionist? I forget what they're called. They may be able to help. I have to assume it is because my brother's partner has always been quite overweight, but she eats very healthily and frequents the gym, but never loses weight. So there has to be some kind of genetic or medical thing going on there. Genetic predisposition to being overweight is absolutely a thing. The only people that say otherwise are normies who don't want to believe they're luckier or want to fat shame. That said, anyone can lose weight and get to a healthy weight. The difference is, some people will have to eat a lot less than normal and or exercise a lot more, because their bodies will cling to any calories. It's a sad, depressing reality. My best method for weight loss is eating only one meal a day. Only have water, exercise every day, and do things to get your mind off of food. Nothing else works for me. I essentially have to starve myself almost 24/7 to be a healthy weight, while others eat 3 meals a day, eat big portions, are normal or thin, and then fat shame. Pathetic. I will say this muscle burns fat, and on blood tests I always have very low creatine and thus have a really hard time building muscle. Maybe that's part of why I am predisposed to have such a struggle. So muscle building may be a good method to help with this problem. I'd have to take creatine and really work out, but you have to be careful how much you take of that, since there are unfortunate side effects. My abuelo and his wife were both overweight and bore a child who always fought with their weight. My abuelo was very svelte when my mother was conceived, and all of my siblings bore to my mom. Aunts and uncles bore to my abuelo are slim. Both my parents were on the slim side. Genes can be activated by weight, nutrition, among a myriad of other factors. That's all I say to that. Anything more is personal. I'm not experiencing it, and I cannot speak to another's mental health, other than if they're a well-balanced human. Lovingly. Lol TF does that look like? It may very well be genetic. Okay, after reading your post and comments, I'm wondering why you care so much about his size if this was his size prior to moving in. It really sounds like he's comfortable with himself, his size, and his level of health currently. So, Why aren't you? Yes, genetics can be a large determining factor of your basal metabolic rate. How quickly you burn through food before your body starts to store energy as fat. Genetics also affect things like your habits, hormone levels, responses to said hormone levels, and pre-existing conditions, all of which can also make weight regulation more difficult. That said, it varies from person to person. There's no singular fat gene, as it were, but genes can account for anywhere from 25% to 80% of your weight. This Harvard article explains a bit more. https://www.health.harvard.edu/stayinghealthy/why people become overweight / text equals genetic %20 influences and text equals the %20 strength %20 of %20 the %20 genetic as %2070 %25 20 to %2080 25. Very much a genetic thing. Everyone has their own uphill battle with it. Some people it's so small you'll step over it without realizing. Others it's aiming for top spot in tallest mountain with 100+ degree slopes. Yes, going backwards to go up. Basically, most are just varying somewhere in the middle. It really is bit of a bell curve in that aspect. To anyone struggling, learn from my experience. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding that one thing that pushes you where you want to be. It could be eating less of certain foods, bread, carbs, soda, etc., etc. It could be an increased substitution, water instead of other drinks as main hydration, or even as simple as the right exercise and enough of said exercise. I used to ride 2 miles per day, plus other activities. Nothing. Had a small change which caused me to go 5 miles per day. I lost weight too fast, according to my doctor at the time. Another change. Had to go back to 2 miles. Plus other sports activities. And I slowly gained it back. No attempt at diet. Wasn't trying to lose weight. Did try to keep it off. But nothing else I ever did before it since worked. Moral of the story. Don't get stuck on just one or two things. And pushing yourself isn't bad. Just don't overdo it or you'll end up in a worse place than where you started. Samoan people tend to be much bigger than other people, but who knows? You can be genetically predisposed to basically anything. After all, the hormones that regulate your feelings are partially controlled by your genetics. Yes, some people are better at converting calories into fat than others. But if you eat less than you use, you will lose weight. God, it's like you described me in this post. 29F. You wouldn't believe the amount of doctors who have told me to stop eating McDonald's when I go in for legitimate health concerns. I went in early July for a bunch of random, but awful, symptoms and was told that, until I take responsibility for my weight, I should expect to have consequences. I was crying afterwards and a nurse stopped me on the way out and she gave me the advice to take a home pregnancy test. Well, I was pregnant. I eat extremely healthy and minimally. Don't drink and exercise every day. My A1C was borderline after an annual physical. Yes, I also seek preventative care. And I went on medication. On top of this, I take a stimulant medication for ADD, which are notorious for weight loss, which of course I haven't experienced. I'm not happy about my weight, but I've accepted it and learned to try and let comments slide. If your husband doesn't want to go see an endocrinologist, stop pushing him. It is his body and choice. If he is okay with it but lazy, i.e., won't make the appointment, support him by alleviating whatever barriers are there. But if he truly doesn't want to go, that's his decision. Genetics play a huge role, as well as mental conditions. health issues, etc. It's really a RNG fest, and no two people have the same thing going on. So in many cases one diet or training plan will not work for others and needs to be adjusted. Even by a bit. Some people just eat a single chip and it wanders straight to the fat reserves the body builds for whatever nuclear winter it is preparing for, while others burn it just by breathing and actually struggle to gain weight. In any case, controlling, gaining, losing weight can require more work than compared to others.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.